Good morning. We're here at the new Oz Arab studio. We have our first guest today. Some of you might know him. He is a Member of Parliament, member for Leppington. Thank you so much, Nathan, for joining us. Please, could you tell us, our viewers, a little bit about yourself to start off with?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm the state member for Leppington, also the government whip. We can get into what that means later, but product of Southwest Sydney. I've lived in Southwest Sydney my whole life. Husband, father, all around big fan of Sydney and Western Sydney and Southwest Sydney, and I think that's me.
Thank you so much. So we'll kick off with our first question. Spoke to you a little bit about this before. Could you please describe to us what it's like representing the Leppington area and what value it holds to residents?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it's a massive privilege to be chosen by your community to represent your community. I still sit in Parliament, the oldest Parliament in Australia, and pinch myself and think, geez, what's little old Nathan doing here? But Leppington's an interesting community because if I go over the suburbs, so we've got sort of Preston's, Carnes Hill, we've also got Austral, Leppington and Middleton Grange, but then you've got places like Kemps Creek and Rossmore, and you've also got places like Raby and Eaglevale. So it's a lot of different communities, but one of the, main things that have come through is that it's a growing community, and like many parts of Western and Southwestern Sydney, it needs infrastructure. We've taken a lot of housing over the last 10, 20, 30 years, but the infrastructure hasn't kept up. And that's one of my major priorities, is making sure we don't just slap a whole bunch of houses, that we build genuine, thriving, healthy communities.
Thank you. So you touched on this a little bit before. Tell me about the challenges that you've experienced, especially in the last year.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest challenge for our community, again, is just that the amount of growth and the amount of housing and the way, infrastructure spending has happened in this part of the world over the last few decades, and the way the planning system works, it sometimes means that the houses go in and then the schools and the roads and the parks go in afterwards. So one of the biggest challenges, and we're making a lot of headway, is schools. So in all of Austral, Leppington and Denham Court, when you think about all that new housing that's gone in there's not a single public high school. So one of the commitments I secured during the election was to build a new high school, and I'm very happy to say that that's progressing really, really quickly. On December the 2nd at 3:30 at Leppington Public School, there's going to be a community consultation session. So I've had a look at the concept designs, but I'd love everyone from the community in Leppington to come down and have a look at those concept designs and give their feedback, because it's your community, it's your school, and you're going to know what's going to work and what isn't, and where the students and where the community is going to benefit from. So education. The other big two are probably roads. So a lot of Austral and Leppington used to be, not very long ago, and they're still there, little sort of 4 and 5 acre farms. So a lot of people from Lebanon. Someone was telling me recently that when the Lebanese cucumber was introduced to Australia, some of the farms were in my area in Austral. So
definitely a thriving Lebanese Australian population there.
Yes. So a lot of farmers, but that's now turning obviously into housing, and so you've got these old roads that are one lane, no curb or gutter, but are now taking essentially main roads. They're taking hundreds and possibly thousands of cars a day. So getting those upgraded. The big one is 15th Avenue, and we are starting on that. Next year there'll be some work to upgrade the intersection with Cow Pasture Road and put in some additional lanes there to get the traffic flowing a bit better. And then open space. So you'll know that in a lot of these new communities, they're built on 200, 300 square metres. There's not much of a backyard, not much of a front yard. The kids need somewhere to go and kick a ball around and play, and so making sure we have plenty of open space. And we recently did the sod turning for Leppington Park, which is a nice big park, not far from the cemetery there. That's going to have stuff for the little kids, big kids, barbecue area. So we're hoping that's open in the next few months, and we can have a lovely open space for people to play in. So again, it goes back to that idea of it's not just about houses, it's about community. And I can do my bit with roads and hospitals, schools and parks. But it's also about supporting faith communities and sporting groups and community groups, because they're the glue that really binds the community together. So supporting them as well.
That's a lot on your plate.
It's huge.
I think education and roads alone, that is. And definitely the residents are better off with your support. So just to take a step back, could you tell me a little bit about your experience before entering politics and how that's influenced your priorities?
Yeah, so as I said, I grew up in southwest Sydney. I lived in public housing. I went to public schools. I think my mum dropped out of school when she was 15. My dad dropped out of school at 14. And, in most parts of the world, if that was your story, I probably would have dropped out of, school at a similar age and went into the family business or, did some labouring. But we live in an amazing country where if you've got a bit of talent or a bit of intelligence and a bit of aptitude and you apply yourself, you can pretty much do anything. And I like to think that I'm a product of those policies, especially good Labor Party policies around, education and university and housing and Medicare. When I was sick as a kid, I could go to the doctor, I could go to the hospital and get looked after. And so for me, the thing that really drove me into politics was ensuring that the next generation had access to that. I think in some ways we've lost a bit of that access to opportunity. And I want to make sure that there's a young kid at the moment, might have come here as a refugee or, might come from difficult circumstances, but they're potentially a superstar soccer player or, going to invent the next thing that cures cancer or going to start up a $1 billion business, then we should, no matter what their background or their circumstances, we should be putting in place all those things that ensure that they achieve what they want to achieve. So that's one of the things that really drove me to politics.
Thank you for that. So we touched on it a little bit earlier. You can see that the long-term background, upbringing in southwest Sydney, the what you're driving for education and roads. Tell me, you spoke about the consultation 2nd of December.
Yep.
Is that your focus? Tell me a little bit, if not, about something else that you're working on for Leppington.
Look, I think education's always a big focus. As I said, I wouldn't be where I was without a good education. But that's been the big bit of feedback from me when I've been speaking to the community and knocking on doors. We have a young population. We have a population of people that have come from all parts of the world that value and know that the key to get ahead is education. But in terms of those big priorities, the other one too is it's not quite in Leppington, but it's next door, and that's the Western Sydney Airport. That is going to be absolutely huge for Western Sydney and the country. So I've had the pleasure of being somewhat involved in that project since day one. So when the Airport Corporation was formed, I was a councillor at Liverpool City Council in I think it was 2016, 2017, and met with the first CEO and the first chair just when it was an organisation of about 3 or 4 people. And to see where that's gone now, where planes are actually landing at the airport. They're testing the runway. The terminal building it looks complete from the outside. The metro's being built. The M12's being built. I went and visited the M12 yesterday. It is going to be huge for our area. So high-tech jobs, well-paid jobs, all kinds of industries, investment from countries with billions of dollars that really want to see this succeed. And it's going to be for some people 5, 10, 15 minutes down the road. So I know for many of us in Western Sydney, if we wanted to get ahead and we wanted to get those really good high-paying white-collar jobs, we had to get on the train for 2 hours in the middle of summer and sweat like we are now and come back 2 hours. But we're going to have access to those jobs just down the road. I think that's awesome. So that's another big priority.
Generations to come will be grateful for the hard work that the collective is supporting for Southwest Sydney and Western Sydney as well, given all that, that we have to offer in our area. So taking a step back, we've heard about it before. It really did cause and is causing issues for residents in Southwest Sydney, particularly for Leppington and Liverpool. Tell me a little bit about the mosquito outbreak. How is that progressing?
Yeah, look, some good news on that. One of the major causes of the mosquitoes was that Sydney Water Pond at Warwick Farm there. They have pretty much treated that. So bit of a sort of complicated story, but there was an invasive species called frogbit, which is a sort of weed. It grew right across the pond. because it's an invasive species, essentially that triggers a whole bunch of sort of biosecurity protocols, and they had to speak to the federal department and work out how to dispose of it properly so they didn't spread it. What they failed to realise is that underneath there it created a perfect environment for the breeding of mosquitoes. So we had a massive outbreak there, but over the last 2 weeks they've been pulling up the weeds, spraying, and they feel that they've certainly got on top of that particular outbreak. But as we know, and we've seen this over many, many years, that part of the world is just prone to mosquito outbreaks, just the way the geography is, and there's a whole bunch of landowners, and there's a tendency for stagnant water to develop. So it's much better, and we've certainly gotten over that sort of initial outbreak. But I think I've had reports right across Western Sydney that certainly haven't come from this Sydney water pond, but have come from right around. But I think we're going to put out some, we already have, but we're going to put out some educational videos and information there about what to do. So, have a look in your backyard. If you've got stagnant water, tip it out. And there's little things like that we can all do. But the good news is, as far as I'm aware, the breed of mosquito that is taken off is not one that carries some of the more scarier viruses like Ross River and that kind of thing. So they're absolute menace, and they're a pest. And I know it's terrible, especially for the young kids when they get bitten. But they don't think there are any serious health risks there. And keep a look on my Facebook page, on Charisma Caliander's Facebook page. We're putting out plenty of information, and she's giving a lot of really, really good updates on that. So that's that. I think going on from that, I have had a meeting with the CEO of Sydney Water, the minister, and Cameron Webb, who's this sort of mosquito expert. I think what we have to establish is, how did this happen? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And we know that we're going to get hotter, wetter summers going forward. Do we need to put something in place every year to make sure that we're on top of this? So when I was a councillor at Liverpool City Council, we had a similar outbreak in 2019, and council put in place a mosquito management plan. And I think we need to re-examine that and say, is that plan adequate? Does it need to happen every year? Who needs to be involved, and how much funding should be on the table there to make sure that we don't see a repeat of what happened a couple of months ago or a month ago? Definitely
that future focus is welcomed by the area and residents. Tell me now a little bit about the coverage, its coverage on media. Do you think that was an adequate response?
Yeah, look, I think the media, it was one of the more interesting stories, and in terms of interest, Channel 7, Channel 9, the newspapers. Look, I think it's wonderful whenever Southwest Sydney gets coverage, whether that was appropriate and whether it was a little bit too sensationalist. We could probably argue about that. What I will say to those media outlets and those journalists is that there are also plenty of really good and positive stories to tell about Southwestern Sydney. So when there's an outbreak of mosquitoes, that certainly warrants news coverage, and it is in the public interest. But there's a whole bunch of other things that are in the public interest that I'd love for those journalists to give me phone calls about once the mosquito outbreak has died down. There are some smart, amazing people that should be getting a lot of attention in Southwest Sydney and aren't. So that's probably my response to that one.
Thank you, Nathan. Definitely something that was covered. Just for our viewers at the moment, we've managed to freeze in a very flattering freeze pane, I believe. So we'll keep going on the radio. Thanks to Nathan and for his good sportsmanship. I think we'll end it on the last question. So for those on right now and watching later, thank you to Nathan for all your work personally and the work of your colleagues and counterparts on the mosquito outbreak, especially being from Southwest Sydney. Definitely something that I experienced myself. So the last question, can you tell me a little bit about how residents can keep connected with your political journey as we approach the next year and after that in your current chapter?
Yeah, look, the easiest way is obviously via the socials. So Facebook, if you type in Nathan Hagarty, I'm sure that'll be the first one that comes up. Quite a bit active on Instagram as well. And then I've also got a newsletter I try and put out every 2 to 3 weeks. So that's always good. So they're probably the three main ways, but I'm always happy to come back here and have a chat every month, every few weeks or whatever. We can have a little standing segment, so they can always tune in to Oz Arab and have a listen to us here. But no, this is I think that the socials are probably the best way. Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan, for your time, for joining us today, and for a big 2024. To all our viewers, please keep connected to Nathan on his journey as he represents Leppington and Southwest Sydney. And we will be back with Nathan at another session. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we'll end there. Thank you, Nathan.
And thank you
Until
for
the
the
next time.